As our climate continues to change, it's becoming an agent in natural selection. Phenotypic plasticity is the ability to change phenotype in response to local environmental conditions. So, as trees bud earlier, the caterpillars that feed on the buds also will hatch earlier. And the birds that rely on the caterpillars to feed their young lay their eggs earlier. There's a directional selection in favor of birds that are able to lay their eggs earlier so that they have the nutritious caterpillars to feed them. Populations of red squirrels are giving birth earlier in the spring. Over 10 years, there's been an 18-day change, so there's a directional selection for early breeding. Squirrels born earlier in the spring are larger by fall, are able to store more food, and are more likely to survive the winter and have more offspring next spring. Populations with high genetic variability and short lifespans may be able to adapt quickly. But animals with longer lifespans and low reproductive rates, animals like polar bears and penguins, will have more trouble adapting in a relatively short period of time. Conservation biology seeks to understand and counter the loss of biodiversity. This is a picture of a black-footed ferret. It's an elusive nocturnal predator. It mainly feeds on prairie dogs. Prairie dogs have suffered population decline and disease, and so the last 18 individuals of this species were captured and been bred in captivity and then slowly returned to the wild. Similar processes have occurred with whooping cranes and silver swords. Silver swords is a plant that grows on the volcanoes in Hawaii. But as we look at things, conservation efforts are increasingly aimed at sustaining an ecosystem, not just a single species. So we have a regional assembly of interacting ecosystems like a forest with adjacent fields, wetlands, streams, and habitat. So they're trying to maintain the whole system. This is a land bridge, and it allows animals from one part of a forest to visit another part of the forest without encountering road traffic. Conservation biologists have identified biodiversity hot spots. These are relatively small areas with numerous endemic species that are found nowhere else in the world. Madagascar is one of the most famous ones of these. The lemur comes from Madagascar and is found nowhere else. In addition, migratory species must be protected. The monarch butterfly lives mostly in the northern hemisphere of the United States, but it flies to protect to certain areas in Mexico and California in the wintertime to overwinter, and those areas need to be protected or else we won't have any butterflies in North America in the summer. And the same is for these large turtles. Their nesting grounds need to be protected in order for us to have turtles out in the wild. So 7% of the world's land is in reserves, but generally these reserves are too small to achieve minimum population sizes. So one of the things they're trying are zoned reserves. And this has been done a lot in Puerto Rico. They take an untouched area and then they take the area surrounding it and say, well, we're going to continue to use the area surrounding the untouched area for humans to live and use, but we're not going to allow any additional development. And in Puerto Rico, this has really helped with ecotourism. Also in Africa, ecotourism is a big thing, and they use the money from the tourists to help protect some of the endangered species. Actually, the pandemic has really hurt some of those because they haven't been getting any visitors. Okay, so this is a story about the gray wolf. The gray wolf was expatriated in the 1920s in Yellowstone, and because there were no predators, the elk population increased, and they ended up damaging the trees and the woodlands. Stream banks were stripped of cover. So in 1995, after long debate, the wolves were reintroduced to the park. The elk population decreased and the trees recovered. So when the trees recovered, the beaver population also recovered. And beavers make beaver dams, and this attracted waterfowl, fish, amphibians, and increased the biodiversity of the park. In addition, the coyote population decreased, and that left more prey for the foxes, badgers, hawks, and owls. So the addition of one animal has changed for a lot of them. I have a meeting to go to. Okay, they don't want me to forget. Restoration Ecology is the use of ecological principles to develop ways to return degraded ecosystems to conditions as similar as found in their natural state. And a good example of this is found in Florida. The Kissimmee River was once a shallow, winding river that ran from Lake Kissimmee to down here. And it had a lot of wildlife and a lot of creatures. And people saw the floodplain around this river as being wasted space. And so they built this canal right here. The canal was straight and deep and handled the water just great. The thing is the same animals couldn't live in the deep canal, and the spawning and foraging habitats for fish were eliminated. Important sport fish like bass were replaced with non-game species. The population of waterfowl decreased by 92%. The bald eagle nesting territories decreased by 70%. Without the marsh to help filter and reduce agricultural runoff, phosphorus and other excess nutrients were transported to the lake and into the Everglades system to the south. So what they did is they filled in this canal and restored the lake to its old course. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of people today without limiting the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And that's what we're aiming for. And so this ends the chapter. Thank you for hanging with me for all these videos. There have been a lot of them. I've enjoyed making them, and I've enjoyed the time with you.